Welcome back to another episode of Your Morning Drive. I am Logan. Thank you for tuning in. Happy you're here. Let's go ahead and get into it. Before we dive in, do me a favor real quick. Whatever platform you're on, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're at, make sure you just hit that subscribe button, that follow button, so that when new episodes come out on Wednesdays, you don't miss a new one. We've got great guests, and I would hate for somebody to go unseen. So go ahead and hit subscribe on wherever you're listening or watching. And of course, on all those platforms, a 5-star review, a comment, a like, all of it helps tremendously. If nothing else, it just gives me feedback, but it also helps boost us up in the feeds and searches and all those fun things. For updates on all of the behind the scenes fun, clips, episode announcements, sponsorship information, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, those are the places to follow along. Let's go ahead and get into it. Guys, my guest today is a longtime Cartersville leader whose career has been rooted in service, community, and consistency. Originally from New York, he moved to Georgia at a young age and has called Cartersville home since 1991. He served since 2001 as the administrator for the Grand Theater and the Teacher Resource Center, and as station manager of WBHF Radio, roles that place him at the heart of local arts, education, and media. Since 2008, he has served as mayor of Cartersville, helping guide the city through growth while staying grounded in its values. Please welcome my new friend, Matt Santini.
Do we wait for applause or do we?
There's applause happening right now. Oh, yeah.
Of course. People are standing, whatever. So, thanks for having me, Logan. It was very nice to meet you and looking forward to just seeing whatever comes to mind over the next little bit to chat. And hopefully we won't bore anybody and maybe learn a little something about each other.
Yeah, I'm excited. I know that you're a busy guy, like I just said. So, I mean, I just appreciate you being here. That's really cool for the city I live in to get to talk to the mayor. That's just really special.
I'm not going to say anything to try to convince you otherwise, but the first rule, I usually tell me, the first rule of knowing me is no, it's not a big deal to know me. So there you go.
Very cool. Well, I heard enough about you from Tim Abbott. He was barking up. He's like, have you had Matt? Have you had Matt? Have you had Matt? No, I haven't. He's like, send him a message.
Tim is a fierce ranger for positivity. So I'll leave it at that.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Look at you or over there. The funny thing is there's two things about me off the bat. You mentioned the radio station, which is where many people became familiar with me, but that's obviously just an audio medium and not video. And so when I've got a camera, I don't know if I'm supposed to be looking there while I'm talking to you or if I
look at me.
The second part is I love asking questions. Ernestine can attest to this at the radio station. I'm the worst interview ever. So you've got your work cut out for you. The folks that I work with have to work real hard to make me look competent.
Sure.
And so that's going to be on you for the next little bit.
That's okay. I'm game for the challenge. Good. I'm always up for it. But yeah, you can look at me. I barely ever look at it. Sometimes if somebody says something crazy, I'll be like, yeah. But other than that, I look at you.
All right. Sounds good.
So tell me about yourself, man. I mean, before we get into Cartersville and what, how you've called it home for so long and being the mayor and all these other things. I mean, give me your backstory. I said you were originally from New York, but like, what's the Matt Santini origin story?
Ooh. So the origin story, I guess if we're going to go back to the New York stuff, I lived in a little Italian town called Fairport, New York, till right before I turned 10. And it was actually about this time of year when my parents, my dad was getting transferred with his job, and he was given the choice of Kalamazoo, Michigan, Dayton, Ohio, or Marietta, Georgia. And so I thank God every day that decision was Marietta, Georgia. And so we got down to the South and grew up in Marietta, went to Sprayberry High School, met my wife at Georgia Southern. We went there when it was Georgia Southern College. We graduated right when it turned Georgia Southern University. Anthea McStats, Santini, owners of McStats Printing Company. So I got here as part of the family business. I worked in the family business for about 10 years, developing the screen printing side of the business. And then in 2001, gave the opportunity when there was this emerging nonprofit organization to join Anverse, as it's called, and have the job duties that you outlined. So that's the short version of what is how I got to be here.
So then when you guys moved down here, you lived in Marietta.
Yeah.
And at what point did you call Cartersville home?
That's a good question because, really and truly, we graduated in December of 90, got married on October 5th of 1991, which I say is my happiest day of my life ever. That was the day the Braves went from worst to first and won the title. But it didn't take long for me to really refer. I mean, now I hope I can stay here for the rest of my life, but I've always kind of felt like I was part of the community when I got here. It didn't take long to try to get involved with something in the community. Got involved with the chamber, got involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and some of I actually attribute a lot of my desire to do things for the community from my parents. Both of them were, I'm one of three boys, and so always involved in sports. But right when we moved down, it didn't take long. My mom became the head of the concession stand for Sandy Plains baseball. And then my dad coached a team the next year. And then it was always, they were either coaching on the board president, or holding multiple things. It really became every night in the spring. I was at the baseball park because they had something going on there. Either me or one of my brothers had a game, a practice, or again, if they're the league coordinator, and really dedicated a lot of their community service life to benefiting youth through sports. And so seeing that example, again, when I got out of school, it quickly kind of became, hey, if you're an adult, you need to be trying to find some way to help the community. And so I'm, again, still find myself doing that today, serving as mayor of Cartersville.
So do you think, like, when you were at that age, when your parents were always at the ball field, like you said, kind of wearing many hats, like doing this, doing that,
Yeah.
do you think that might have had any impact on, like, you wearing multiple hats today?
I don't know I don't know that that's a direct line,
Mhm.
but I don't know that it was something that I sought out. Obviously, the job with Anvers, being responsible for three different facilities, I mean, it's one job that takes care of three different things. But no, I just look at it as a passion for community service. Like I said, I've served on multiple boards and always trying to find ways to try to help other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you balance it all?
Well, the greatest balance I have is, first of all, I got a fantastic wife that shares a lot of those passions, but she's really dedicated. Being a small business owner is a really rough life, and people think that, oh, you just sit back and you count money, and then you go home and you count more. It's no, it's like, it's you have to be really devoted and driven. And my wife, it's one of the many things I love about her is her devotion and her passion to what she does professionally, and she supports me for what I do professionally, and also the other community service things. But I also have, like I said, I'm responsible for around, if you include full time, part time, three facilities and about 40 or so employees. But I've got fantastic leadership at all three of those facilities and wonderful dedicated employees throughout our organization that the really the secret sauce. So when you ask me how I balance it all, it's, if I'm smart at anything, I'm smart enough to have really good people that are working real hard to make me look good.
Well,
So
that's why we surround ourselves with good people. My
absolutely.
wife, I can share the same
Yeah.
thing. Is I often joke when we go to networking events. Sometimes, if it's at a good time, she's a teacher in Cobb County, so she gets home and most nights she's exhausted. She teaches second grade, so
Mhm.
she's just ready to go to bed. But every once in a while, I'll be able to drag her to something, and she's better at talking about me than I am. They'll be like, "Oh, what are you here for?" And she's like, "Actually, my husband, he does this, 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 this." And often people are like, "What do you do to me?" And I'm like, what do I do?" And it's so funny, but yeah, you just surround yourself with good people, and
Absolutely.
having an A+ spouse that is good at that and is as driven as you are, it all just adds up and makes to succeed.
Yeah. And I'd add the same thing to the city, the part-time job I have as mayor. The city is run by a city manager who's responsible for the 400 or so employees that we have working at the city and all these different departments and providing all these services. And so, you know, it's good leadership from the city manager position to the department heads to every single person. You know, uh, that's what makes the city work. And I've said that since my time in office is really and truly. I mean, if your power goes out at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm not out there hanging from a pole. There's somebody that is up, either if it's cold, raining, hot, whatever it is, there's somebody coming out to provide that service for the city. And in many cases, it's not odd for me to get an email from somebody who's either from here or from somewhere else that says, "Man, I just gotta let you know, man, you guys really helped me out," or, there was an off-duty fireman or policeman. We were on 75, we had a flat tire, and they just happened to come by, and they stopped, and they helped us, and, it's as I said, the secret sauce is having a whole lot of really dedicated people that care about doing a good job and serving the community.
Sure. And I'm bouncing all over the place, so
That's
forgive me for
fine.
not having any
That's
structure.
right where I am.
I just think about things and I'm like, "Oh, screw everything I wrote down. Let's just think about the questions that pop up in my head."
Sure.
So like when you're getting older, you're going through you're working for the family business, you're serving some time there, you get this job at this nonprofit, so you're starting to get more and more involved with Cartersville. We are supported by Jess Suro Photo. Jess Suro Photo offers personalized portrait sessions that bring out the best in every moment, whether you need family portraits, senior pictures, or photos for engagement announcements. Jessica combines creativity and expertise to deliver breathtaking images you'll treasure forever. She provides tailored sessions to fit your needs, high quality images with attention to detail, and fun, friendly, professional service. She's done our professional headshots at Your Morning Drive and Hammerhead Creations for the past couple years. We love her. We recommend her any chance we get. So go ahead and book her today. Capture life's most special moments with Jess Suro Photo. At what point do you get prompted by God, by family, by your environment, by whoever to consider running to represent the city that you live in? I mean, did you ever at a younger age think about politics or local government or any of that?
No, not really. I mean, being involved in sports, you used to working as a team, and hopefully you're dedicated enough to kind of excel at those things. And again, everybody that grew up playing sports thinks they're probably a little better than they are. I don't know that I'm any different than that. But, I was put into some leadership roles on teams, and, did fairly well. Again, I wasn't a college athlete, but I was a high school athlete. Like I said, anybody that wants to participate can pretty much do that. I didn't really think about politics. I remember my 8th grade social studies teacher wrote something, Glenn Robertson, who wrote something in my book, my annual about, keep working hard and the world will know a great leader. And he wrote my name on it. And I was always thought that was kind of cheesy, and not that the world has gotten a great leader out of me. But actually, the former mayor, the person that I replaced, Mike Fields, who was an outstanding mayor in and of himself, were friends and we were neighbors for a period of time on a couple occasions. But I was actually working somewhere. I was at the radio station, and I went to a council meeting. He used to he'd be on the air about once a month as a guest or something, and I was asking him something about that. He goes, "Well, next year it's not gonna matter." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I'm not running." And I said, "Well, if you're not gonna be mayor, who is?" And he kind of shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know." He goes, "You ought to do it." And I said, "Crazy." And I'll circle back to that in just a minute. But he said, city manager runs it. You got to work with council and do. Kind of went through it. Went home, figured I'd mention it to my wife. We would laugh about it, and that'd be the end of it. And she goes, "I think you'd be pretty good at that if that's what you wanted to do." And then started asking some friends, then check with my employer and other folks. And next thing you know, I was on a ballot and got elected. The funny thing about Mike is when he ran back in I guess it would have been 1999, that he called me and said, "Hey, I want to run something by you and just want to get your gut reaction." I said, "Okay." He goes, "I'm thinking about running for mayor." And there was no answer. He goes, "Well, I think I just got my answer. Thanks." And I said, "No, no, no." I said, I would love for you to be mayor because currently, even though I knew Sam Smith and somebody I really respected, I said, I'd love to have somebody my age that I'd feel comfortable just yelling at if I had a problem. I said, but here's the thing. I said, you weren't born here. You don't have a big family here. You don't go to a big church here. I don't know how you win an election without having those three things behind you. I said, but I'll support you. I said, I'd love to have you, as be mayor. And he got in a 5-way runoff, got into the runoff, and then squeaked out a victory in that runoff and became mayor. But again, I go back and saying 6 years later, when he says I ought to run for mayor, I'm not born here, don't have a big family here, don't go to a big church here. Well, and won election. And then as long as I'm rambling about this, I'd gotten elected, and but it was before I took office, and I was speaking to, I think it was, I can't remember if it was the home builders or the board of realtors. And I stood in front of them and I said, look, I said, I haven't done the research, but I'm guessing, I'm probably the first northern mayor of the town. I'm probably the first, I'm probably I joke, I said, I'm probably the heaviest mayor. I'm probably the first Catholic mayor. I'm probably the first Italian mayor. I started going through all these different things. And the guy in the front row goes, well, we didn't know that before we voted for you. So, but anyway, it's, I do call Cartersville my home. I mean, this place is, and I tell people that are new to the town, I said, look, here's the thing about Cartersville. If you jump in with both feet and want to do good, this town will and if you say, you jump in with both feet and say, I'm a part of y'all, this community will wrap its arms around you and say, all right, you're one of us. But at the same token, if you kind of dip your toe in the water, or, people are going to sense that too, and you're not going to have the level of success that you're looking for here, because I think we're pretty good at, I don't know, smelling a rat. I don't know that that's the right way to use, but if somebody that's not authentic, but I do say again, you brought up Tim Abbott earlier. Tim is somebody who's serving on your Harley City Council. He, he's not from here, but he came here and decided, hey, I'm going to jump on in and I'm going to try to do some good. There's countless examples in our community of people as it continues to grow and we continue to hold on to that hometown feel that we have, that people that have come here and want to do good and tug on the rope in the right direction. And again, they're just part of us now.
Yeah. That was something I was really impressed by when we moved here. At first we moved, and I can't wait to talk about this in a second, about how Cartersville has changed over even the last 5 years. We moved here because we were living with my parents after we got married. My parents struck us in a fantastic deal that I'm still grateful for to this day, and probably will forever. We got married and we were living in an apartment in downtown Kennesaw, and they were raising the rent, and it was a raise by like 40%. It was an insane hike. And we got married, and we were talking just at dinner or something with my parents, and I just said, we can afford it, but saving for a house is going to take a long time. With this rent, we could make it by, we could pay our bills, but we're not going to save much. And my dad said, well, let me do this for you. Let me extend this to you, because I always wish my parents could have done this for me. You guys get married, you move in with us, because our wedding was right around the time our lease was up. So it was like perfect timing. He was like, get married, go on your honeymoon, and move in with us. You can stay with us for the maximum of a year, and then we'll kick you out. But during that year, you're not going to pay me rent. You're not going to buy your food. You're not going to pay utilities, nothing. You're going to instead show me proof that instead of paying me rent, you're taking, the number was $2,000. He's going to say, you're going to take $2,000 like you'd be paying for rent, and you're going to put it in a high yield savings account. You're going to screenshot the confirmation. You're going to send it to me every month. That's your rent payment. And then when you move out in X amount of months, you'll have that as your down payment. And we did that for 9 months, 10 months, and we were looking for homes, and we never planned on moving to Cartersville. I mean, we, truth be told, wanted to live in Kennesaw, mainly because my wife teaches in Kennesaw.
Sure.
But
we can change that, but we'll come back to that.
We can. We're always open to a conversation. But so she's teaching in Kennesaw. And so we were looking in Kennesaw, and man, like at that time, and probably still, the real estate prices in Kennesaw just weren't approachable for a first time home buyer. And one of our friends had gotten in Cartersville in the previous year, and they said, come look at Cartersville. They said, come to the downtown area, meet us for lunch. We'll show you around. So we do. They ended up having to cancel for whatever reason. But then we said, let's still go. Let's go to Cartersville. So we came into town, had lunch at Mule House, and walked around the downtown area a bit, drove up and down the streets around Main Street and, around downtown area. And we were like, this place is so cool. Like the downtown area is popping. And the only thing we had to compare to was like, Marietta Square or downtown Kennesaw. And so I was like, this place is like triple the size of downtown Kennesaw. And there's actually room to park. There's plenty of restaurants, plenty of variety. The shops are all cool. And so we said, this place is awesome. So we drove around, found this neighborhood when it was still being constructed. We said, let's just go in. We didn't even plan on trying to go for like a new build home or anything like that. We just said, screw it. We're here. Let's go look. The price was great. And we signed the next day. We came back the next day and signed and said, we'll do it. And for the first 3 months, I was telling someone this morning, actually, I was like, for the first 3 months, we were like, we're just here because it's affordable. We'll move to Kennesaw, for our next home. After 6 months, I was like, I don't want to leave.
Yep.
This place is great. So amazing. And the business community, like you said, and citizens, not just business owners, but everyone is so tight. Like everyone truly wants the other to succeed. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to help someone else win, which is super cool. I've never seen anything like that. And I moved around a lot growing up, and I never quite saw like a community that I lived in that was so just tight knit. It was really, really cool to see.
Yeah, I agree. And then, if you're complaining about growth, this guy's the reason why.
Yeah, I'm part of the problem,
Well,
guys.
and I do find that interesting. The fact that I've been here long enough. You're saying, well, Mulehouse was there. Well, Mulehouse is a great story in and of itself, a great entrepreneurial story. But I've been here long enough now where it's like, I remember when this building was that, and this building. Usually it's the older people that do that. I'm 57, but I still think I'm 28, still think I'm the young guy in the room when I'm obviously not. But then, the other side with growth, again, I remember when it was much smaller. I remember when you say there's plenty of parking here, I don't hear many people say, "Oh, this is a great city with plenty of parking," because that gets more and more of a challenge. But,
Sure.
but again, I put you in that category too. You come up here, you've kind of put some roots down here. You're part of us, and you're trying to do some good things. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, doing our best. And we just love Cartersville and just love that, especially with us, we're, 8 minutes from downtown. So it's hop, skip, and a jump if we, don't want to cook. It's like, oh, we'll go get dinner somewhere downtown.
Yeah.
And you could do that. You could probably eat downtown every day for 2 or 3 weeks and go to a different place each time. I mean, there's tons of variety. And before we talk about kind of how Cartersville has expanded a little bit, I want to tell you about one of the partners of the podcast, Matt.
Okay.
Are you cool with that? Guys, today, one of our podcast partners is Good Days Canned Cocktails. If you're a canned cocktail person, you're tired of beer, tired of wine, and you want something new, try Good Days. I happen to have a can sitting right there. They're a local Marietta company. They're started here in Georgia. They set out to create the perfect canned cocktail with real juices and no artificial flavoring. They're created in a convenient, ready-to-drink format to meet the need for a quality pre-mixed cocktail on any occasion. They've supported Your Morning Drive for several years now. They're great folks, and they keep throwing free booze at me, so I'm going to keep working with them. But we appreciate them. If you want to try them out and you're looking for a liquor store or a place near you that sells their product, you can go to their website, drinkgooddays.com, and you can look at their locations where they're sold and get you a pack of their product. Of course, you must be 21 years of age to drink and purchase. Yeah, Matt, it's crazy. Even like when that day that we came here in town.
I'm sensing parting gift.
Oh yeah, I'll give you a
rice-a-roni.
Yeah.
When you were on a game show, that's what you got.
Oh yeah,
seems like some of that.
I'll give you some. I'll give you some. I meet up with them every couple months, and we have strategy talks and this, that, and the other. But when we're walking to our cars, he's always just like, "Hey, 1 sec," and he gives me like 3 cases of these things. So I'll give you a little parting gift. They're great. I mean, I am allergic to beer. Actually, I can't have hops, so that rules out pretty much 99.9% of beers. And so I'm always drinking, the seltzers, the vodka waters, all of those things. And then I met these guys through a mutual connection, and their drink is actually pretty good. And they've got 4 flavors. They've got, that one's the whiskey one. That one's the heavy one. It's like 8% or something like that. It'll get you where you're going real quick. But they've got a vodka cranberry. They've got a gin gimlet, and they've got a vodka lime. And man, summertime, I mean, they're good year round, but summertime, you're at a pool, you're at a cookout.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
Dude. They'll,
Wonderful.
Great. They actually sell them at Southern Cove as well. I actually made that connection too, because I was like, I love Southern Cove, but I want a Good Days. And so I linked the 2 Jasons. Both of them are named Jason, of course. And now they sell it in Southern Cove. So I was like, yes.
Good connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, that day that we're here in Cartersville driving around, we were like, there's no traffic. Because we're used to Kennesaw. If you want to go somewhere in Kennesaw, it's like Barrett Parkway is your solution.
Yeah.
And God, Barrett Parkway at any time of the day, any day of the week is just a nightmare. And we got here and I was like, man, there's no traffic. And it was like a Saturday morning at noon. I was like, this is great. And even in the last 3 years that we've been here, it's expanded tremendously. We're still nowhere near the levels of traffic of like Kennesaw, Woodstock. But Cartersville has gotten busy, and they're throwing all these communities up left and right. I see it as a win because as a homeowner and as, a property owner, I see it as a win because property values go up, of course, when people move to an area and there's constant economic development and there's all these growth things happening around me. But I'm curious, how do you go about I'm trying to think about how to ask this. Like, how do you go about like encouraging growth, but also staying true to the town's roots? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
No, and I've said, you know, I think if anything that needs to be preserved, we talked about that hometown feel, the fact that we have neighbors and people caring about each other, or people, I kind of define us as a community that cares. Very rarely do you hear of anything where there's a need in the community and there's not a group of people that rally around to fill that. And like you, I haven't lived a lot of different places, but I've lived a few other places to know that there's something special about Cartersville in that regard. Relative to growth, the growth is coming. And, you kind of outlined one of the reasons or some of the reasons why people want to be here. There's a quality of life here. There's plentiful job opportunities with more coming on board. And with that comes the issue of, pricing and affordability, which everybody wants to talk about. And I remember it was some years ago, I was speaking with a group of people who were young college graduates. They wanted to be in Cartersville, but prices had gotten to a point where they really didn't feel like they could afford it. And with that comes people whose, again, their tax levels come up to a level where they feel like they're getting taxed out of their homes, is what some people refer to that is. But if we're just looking at the value of the home, again, the city of Cartersville doesn't do that. That's the tax assessor's office.
Sure.
It's not the individuals. There's formulas and there's products, and we've certainly passed some things around here to help mitigate that. But you know, my answer back was, so we've created a place that people want to be and where there's all this opportunity. And as a result of that, your largest asset is appreciating in value. I'm
What's the
I'm
problem?
supposed to apologize for
Right.
that. I can't apologize for that, but it does, again, it creates an issue for some people. And, you as mayor, you're tasked to serve everybody. And so even if it's a small minority of people that are sharing that concern or whatever, to say it's 10, 15%, that's a pretty large percentage, but you know what I'm saying? You have to at least address it and see what you can do. City doesn't control the cost of rent or what, the market determines these things, and there's little to nothing that we can do. We're always looking. We've got some ideas in mind, and hopefully we're able to do some things that'll try to mitigate the burden on the taxpayer. The interesting thing relative to taxes, and boy, who doesn't want to sit down and talk about taxes, a long, deep-seated discussion on that. But I'll tell you, when people complain about their taxes, and I'm not passing this along to everybody else, nobody likes paying taxes. Unlike Congress, we don't pass in local government, you don't pass laws that don't apply to you. And so, I tell when I'm talking to second graders, hey, look, I go shopping, I cut my own grass, I cook my own food. I'm just a guy that lives in the city that happens to have this part-time job. So we're not sitting, if I'm speeding and I get a ticket, guess what? I'm getting a ticket, I'm going to court, I'm going to get what anybody else has coming to them.
Yeah.
Um, so when it comes to that affordability piece, it's and growth, I look at it from a standpoint of we have to continue to be a place, in my mind, if we're creating jobs here, I'd really like for people to have the same kind of commute I do. I'm 4/10 of a mile from work. If even that, I'm a 4-minute drive from my office. People look at me cross-eyed and I'm like, I fill up my gas tank maybe once every week, week and a half. I look at the people whose quality of life, if you're getting in your car every morning and having to drive down to Atlanta, if we could be providing jobs here and you've got a 10-minute drive or a 20-minute drive, or you're not on the something that has you working close to home, well, that's less time that you have to be on the road. And it's a quality of life thing. You're not spending 10 hours a week commuting to and from work. And so from the growth perspective, I think there's some nobility in that. I know I'm going to jump around a little bit, but when you talk about parking, that's not people complain about parking. And my answer is like, again, if the issue is we have so many people that are wanting to come downtown to eat, dine, hang out, go to a museum, do whatever. If there's more space, if there's more people than there is space, it's a good problem to have. If you
Mhm.
look at the opposite of that, that's an even bigger problem. When I first got in office in 2008, we had plants closing. It was where are the jobs for the people, and now where's the people for the jobs?
Mm,
And again, they both have their own set of problems that need to be solved, but I think a lot of places would trade our problems for theirs. And I look at relative to that growth and those new developments that come on board. I do think there's a balance, certainly, and I also think in that same light, what the citizens expect or where my mind really is, and I've said this for years, if we're a place where people wanna be, it's not a time to lower our standards. You know, we want to create or we wanna have projects that or developments that are gonna be good long term for the city, that are gonna be bringing value, because again, as a developer, and I'm certainly not speaking poorly of developers, I don't think I am, but, if you're running a business just like a developer, a lot of the ones that are from out of town, they're looking at, "Here's this square of land, how can I maximize what I'm doing on
sure.
this?" That's just the nature of that, but how do I make the most money? I think
Right.
we all do that
Sure.
in some fact or fashion, but as a government, how do you I think it's incumbent upon us to kind of push back and go, "Hey, we understand what you're trying to do, but what's best for this community is this." We've again, not to get too deep into the weeds on it, but we've had some rezoning cases that I mean, we make decisions. There's 6 council members and me, and if there's a tie, I get to vote, but if not, my job is really just to kinda sit back and kinda steer the conversation. Sometimes 90% of the times I get my way, and the other 10 I don't, and who's to say? You certainly don't want me making unilateral decisions. That's a story for another day. But I think there's an opportunity when these things do come. My questions to the developer is, all right, you bought this property, you're wanting to do this with it. How long have you owned the property? Well, I've owned the property 15, 20 years. Okay, it was zoned R20 when you bought this property, which is residential houses. And now you're wanting to put this other thing here that's going to fit more stuff on it. Yeah. I'm like, well, it's not our job. You've owned this, you've sat on it. It's not our job, I don't think, as a council to rezone you out of a bad business decision. If we need to talk about smaller lot sizes, different kinds of houses or something, that's that's where we need to be versus just kind of blanketly just saying, do whatever you want to on this particular piece of property. And I think we're not perfect, but I think we've done a fairly good job of that. And I think moving forward, I know I plan on being a lot more stringent, more aggressive in making sure that voice gets heard.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Jumping around again, I
Sure.
mean, you have, looking back on kind of this entire tenure that you've served as
Mm.
mayor, which is a long time. I did a light research on you.
Yeah, don't do much.
You've served for a while.
Yeah.
And that's really cool because I mean, even the 2 predecessors that you mentioned, I mean, they served, terms for X amount of years. But when I saw that you've been the mayor since 2008, I was like, really?
Yeah.
2008? That's a good long time. So that's really cool to think about the fact that over time, the people, no matter how busy or whatever you want to say Cartersville's gotten, people are still voting for you and keeping you in office
Yeah.
because they've liked what you've done so far and are open to the future of Matt Santini. So, I mean, looking back, can you name like 1 or 2 decisions or seasons that's really tested your
Oh, yeah.
leadership in
Sure.
this part-time job?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, I never would have thought I'd been in office this long. Never thought I would have wanted to be. They're 2-year terms. I get paid $7,200 a year.
Really?
It's the same a mayor has made since the middle '80s, and I like it, and I'll tell you why. Former Mayor Mike was trying to get it. There's a process to go through. You can't vote yourself a raise, but it takes an act of legislature, through the legislature to get that up. And I said, it's not nothing. If you're doing something, you should be, compensated for your time. Council members are paid too, not as much. I think they get 4,800. Might be overstating that, but I think that's right. But I think there is value in having it be at a level where you're not doing it for the financial compensation. You're doing it more for the community, because you want to be in office and you want to be making good decisions for your community. If it was doubled or tripled, you'd have people that would want to be in office for that
Just for the
financial
money.
boost.
Yeah.
And so I don't begrudge it. I'm honored to have that, and I try to put as much of that back into, it costs me to be in office to a little bit of extent, but Anyway, not doing it for the money, doing it for the community service. And I hope that it stays that way, that we have people in office that serve because they want to make a difference locally. Relative to tough decisions, I'll tell you a few of them. Well, first of all, right when I got in office, the housing market bottomed out. That was a lot of fun. We went years where, we weren't giving employees raises, and at the same time, we were increasing their payments to the insurance that they were on. Those were not fun days. They're not easy decisions. That was tough, having to be the one to have to, it's one thing to come up to somebody and shake their hand, tell them they're doing a good job, but at the same time, but you're not getting any more money. That was really tough. I'll tell you from a decision standpoint, Louis Tonsmeyer, Sr., who was honored to serve with on council for a number of years, across the street from his subdivision over there near Carter Grove, there was a piece of property to be rezoned, and they were going to put I think it was a CVS or a Walgreens on the corner where obviously if you're out there, there's still not a CVS or Walgreens or anything commercial out there, but they wanted their property rezoned from residential to commercial. And, at the time where that big brick wall is going into Carter Grove, there was talks about a Publix being out there. And of course, in 2000, all this stuff fell through because of the housing crash.
Sure.
Anyway, I remember sitting in a room filled with neighbors, people in his neighborhood who were across the street from that development and were totally opposed to it. And, lo and behold, it comes down to a 3-3 vote, and I cast the vote to allow it. And so, went against somebody I admire, respect, immensely, and an entire room of people that felt one way, but I felt, I'm in office to make decisions for what I think is best for the city, not what's popular. I mean, the goal isn't to see how long you can stay in office. The goal is to make good decisions while you're in there. And I've told people, I said, look, my job entails, well, there's two things I got to do every day. I got to look myself in the mirror and I got to put my head on a pillow at night. And I'm not going to do anything that makes either one of those things difficult. Was it the right decision? I don't know that it was or wasn't, but I can tell you that I took the time, I listened, and I felt that was right at the time. Again, just so it turns out none of that ever happened. And here we are nearly 20 years later, and it still hasn't. But that was tough. Certainly navigating COVID was, it was a challenge. The first month, I think it was February of 2020, it was before the governor had put in the statewide mandates and whatnot, which is funny. Initially I was kind of like, no, you don't need to tell us how to do,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, this is tough. I'd get an email from a young lady who was a waitress and saying, look, I live with my grandmother and she's elderly and she's sick and I'm being forced to go to work, at this please shut the restaurants down because I can't, I'm going to bring this home I'm going to
Sure.
kill my grandmother
Sure.
essentially.
Yeah.
At the same time, you've got a restaurant owner. And again, my wife being in small business, here's a guy, hey, this is how I put food on my family's table. Please don't shut down the restaurants. We got to be, we need this business to survive. How do I, and both looking at me to make a decision. As a matter of fact, probably still do sitting on an email somewhere that, can't believe they shut us down. It's like, well, I've got an email here. So anyway, that was a challenging month. I would say we were hacked. We had a security breach at the city. I don't know if you recall that. I think that was in 21-ish where somebody got in and tried to handle our stuff with ransomware and whatnot. Unfortunately, our IT guy, Stephen Greer, who still works for the city, was getting alerts and whatever and got us unplugged and was able to reclaim most of all that. And we were held hostage for a little bit of time and we were working with the FBI and getting that number negotiated down for what they wanted.
Wow.
In the meantime, as we're negotiating, he's finding these little back ways to siphon off all the data, like all of our underground. I don't think I'm telling anything I shouldn't, but like all of our utility plots.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, and I will say this, and this is honest to goodness truth. There was never they weren't after customers. Like, we didn't have like names, social security numbers, any of that data was ever compromised, but it was things like infrastructure, like where all the underground water lines in the city. You kind of got to know where those things are.
Sure.
And so
A little
we were
important.
able to build back, and the FBI told us at the time that what we had negotiated down to, and I don't remember what the number was. I mean, we had to prove it in council, so it's all public record. but it was the CIA or the FBI had told us at the time that was the largest amount of a discount that any of these hackers had ever that we got away with. They started it, I think, at 4 million, and I want to say it came down to like
Lord.
600,000 or something like that. Well, I mean, it's your data if they've got it.
Wow.
So anyway, it was that was living that and being challenged with it is kind of a tough time.
This is going to sound like a really stupid question, but this is just kind of
I'll probably give you a stupid answer.
This is stupid. Shouldn't even
Go
ask
ahead.
it, but
No,
I'm going
ask
to.
it. Please do.
Is our data that valuable?
Well,
Just kind of broadly speaking, not just like Cartersville, but just in general.
You've got an iPad in front of you.
Yeah.
That data may not be worth anything to me. What's it worth to you? So if I have that,
How much?
it's kind of important for you to have it.
Yeah, I get that.
And again, I will reiterate, because it is, and touched on that, is there was never a period of time when customer or resident data was involved in any of that. And again, I think largely because Stephen was getting these alerts and, oh my gosh, we're under a cyber attack, and got in and unplugged everything.
That's crazy.
And so they didn't get as much as they thought they were going to. Oddly enough, the way they got in was months earlier, there was a former employee who had clicked on something in their office that wasn't like anything. They got tricked into something.
Sure, it happens.
And what they got tricked into is an invoice, I think, if I recall correctly. And they got into the system that way and sat there for months and kind of permeated the whole system. And then that's how those viruses
That's how it
work.
starts.
Yeah. So anyway, and there's things under, we've got obviously even more stringent controls now. And the other thing we have is cyber insurance. So if that happens again, you're constantly under attack. But that was a real challenging, that was a challenging time. And, whenever there's a rezoning, we've had a couple of high profile ones where, people are going to be happy. There's some that are going to be happy and some that aren't. I'm more of a collaborative, hey, let's figure out a way that everybody can walk away a little bit, feeling like they got a piece of a victory. But when in those cases, that's just challenging. And, you hear from people that and you like, on both sides of the issue. And it's not about who and what you like. It's, you just do the best. And like I said, try to do just the best you can. And hopefully that's good enough. Getting back to COVID, I can tell you some of it was form emails. Some of it was this other stuff, but it's like, yeah, I know you have an election coming up and I'm going to be watching what you do. And I'm like, look, thank you, because you should be doing that anyway. But, I'm not going to be making decisions to see, I'm going to make the decision I think is best. If you don't think you want me in there making those decisions,
show up to the polls.
Fine. Well, I mean, I'm not that. It's just like, then don't vote for me. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, I respect and appreciate every person that has voted for me. It's a tremendous compliment and an honor for them to trust me with what they've trusted me with, especially for this period of time. But once again, I'm not going to make a decision so that you're going to vote for me. Like, if you don't do this, I'm not going to vote for you. If I don't think it's right, I mean, I'm sorry you feel that way. Maybe there's 9 other things that I have done that you do agree with that I could still earn your vote. But it's not, again, I'm not a vote hunter. I mean, my goal is to make good decisions, and I still have a passion for doing it as long as people will let me. And hopefully I don't overstay my welcome. But like I said, those times are really challenging. The other time is challenging, quite frankly, is campaign time. I run every 2 years. So this past time was my 10th campaign. And I'm all for our form of government. Yes, campaigns need to be run, every, the way they're supposed to. I don't like what it does. I'm a pretty competitive person. And
so you get real into it.
Well, it brings out some personality traits of mine that have been quelled ever since I was a young kid as I've matured. But, it brings out, and the other thing is I enjoy serving. I tell people what I do the most is I help people and I solve problems. If you've got a problem, you can reach out to me. I may not have the answer, but I can connect you with somebody that does. I can get you an answer. It may not be the answer you want, but this is the answer. Or maybe there's a way we can navigate something where everybody's kind of happy. I like that part of it. What I don't like is saying, listen to me. You need to make me a priority in your life. Because if I'm not in office, your life, this place is going to be, it's not, I mean, we all know in reality, it's not that way. But if you look at every campaign, they're saying, well, if you don't vote this way, then the world's going to end. It's not. it's going to change, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse, maybe a little bit of both. I don't like coming to people and saying, I need you to make me a priority in your life
Yeah.
because I'm that important. And I'm not. And people ask, I'll tell you right now, I have $86.69 in my campaign account. And other than the qualifying fee, I didn't spend anything last time. I've got signs from previous times. People go like, well, how come you don't have a war chest, or why aren't you? I'm like, I'm not going to ask you to give me $100 that's going to sit in a bank account over here, and some people say, well, you should have 10, 15, $20,000 sitting in an account. So if somebody did want to run against you, you've already got this and it's kind of a deterrent. I'm not going to hold. I'd much rather have you give that to something that you like or keep it in your own pocket to do whatever you want to. The other question I've been asked since 2008 is, what are you going to do after this? I've said from the beginning, I have zero political aspirations other than being the mayor of the city of Cartersville. I think I would have done something by now had it would have shown itself. Again, local government is different. If you've got a problem, the local government is able to help you solve that. You can't really change the state or change the world as one person, but my feeling has always been, if you can change this little part of the world that you're in and make it a little bit better, you can do that. Not by yourself, but you can impact change a lot more locally, and hopefully the people next door see it and they do it, and then the person next door does it. And before you know it, you have made a larger difference, but just by what you're doing here local.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about local government, but before I do that, can I tell you about a couple more of my friends?
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you now,
This
Mayor
is a
Matt.
live read in the business.
Live read.
Very
Yeah.
smooth transition.
I love to live read.
I stepped on your smooth transition, so go ahead.
No, you're
Hey,
good.
do me a favor.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about your friends that are making this possible.
Hey, thank you, Mayor Matt. I appreciate that segue. Guys, are you looking to level up your company's branding and merchandising? Matt, we've all gone to these golf tournaments, these networking events. We always get the little goodie bag. It's got a pen or a golf ball in it. And sometimes it's nice, but more often than not, it's not great quality stuff. It's very cheap. They made it because they needed something to give out, and it doesn't leave a lasting impression. Well, these guys can step in and be the solution for that. They're born out of Harley, Georgia, just down the street. They're called Branded and Devoted Designs. Great guy by the name of Dave Davis runs this company. And you can level up your brand with hats, shirts, tumblers, mugs, laser engraved coffee mugs like this one right here, polo shirts like the one I'm wearing. I mean, anything that you want to put your company's logo on, Dave can make it happen. So if you are interested in leveling up your stuff, it's the new year. It's time to re-up on shirts and whatnot for your employees. Go ahead and go to their website, brandedanddevoted.designs.com. And they will give you 10% off if you tell them Logan sent you. So go ahead and take advantage of that offer if you would do so, please. So one thing I kind of wanted to touch on, and just shows how naive I am, is, I feel like when I was growing up, I thought and not that it's not, but I felt like there was more. I thought the mayor was a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought growing up, of course, my only real exposure to politics is the presidential elections and maybe the governor races.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd never, and maybe this is because I never owned a home or I wasn't an adult, growing up, because when you're a kid, you're not an adult. That's what they say. But, I always assumed that being the mayor of a city, no matter how big or small, was a full-time job. And then when I grew up and I moved to Cartersville, for example, they're like, oh yeah, the mayor job, that's just a part-time role.
Yeah.
And the same goes with Woodstock and Kennesaw and Ackworth and all these towns in Metro Atlanta. The mayor is not a full-time job. Maybe in Atlanta, it's a full-time job, or New York City, it's a full-time job. But in the small suburb towns, no matter how big or small they are, it's a part-time role. And I think do you think that's a real common misconception about the mayor?
Well, I think it's easy because when you're watching, news, who's going to make news? The big city, mayor of Atlanta. That's a full-time job. He's running the city. The great thing is every local community gets to choose their form of government. A matter of fact, Cartersville is the first city in the state of Georgia to have a city manager form of government.
Really?
Yeah. And, if someday they decided they wanted to have the mayor be a full-time position, or, then the voters could decide to do that. But yeah, I think it's a pretty common misconception because again, most of the times you're hearing about the mayor of a large city somewhere where it is a full-time job.
Yeah, I think that's something that needs to the word needs to be spread more about it, mainly also because I feel like not enough people, and myself included, when I first turned 18, I only ever voted. The first time I voted was for the 2016 election. That's when that was the first presidential election that allowed me to vote since I turned 18. And you know, I, for a long time, I don't think I grew up in a household where voting in the local elections was
Mhm.
a priority. And now I could be wrong about that. My mom could call me after she listens to this and say, "No, we voted in all the local elections," but I just never heard about it. I
Yeah,
always heard about presidential because it was the debates were on TV,
right.
but I just never had heard of local elections. How do you think that we can get more people to vote in those local elections because they're so important and they're arguably more important.
I would agree. I mean, once again, you can have a greater say over what happens in your own community than you can have nationally.
Sure.
Um, I think there's debate going back and forth. I've heard people say, well, these local elections are held on odd numbered years and they kind of stand alone. And but that's by and large the nonpartisan with places like us. Like our election was last year. This coming fall will be, you know, larger races,
Sure.
statewide stuff, and of course you'll have a lot
Midterms
of
and
yeah,
stuff
you'll
in
have
a
all
few
that
years.
going on, and they're like, well, the local elections need to be the same time this is because people are coming to the polls, and I would respectfully disagree with that because if that were the case, we would all the local races would still kind of get lost in the wash. Yeah, you might have more people that would show up, but at what level are they? If it's in the middle of a presidential campaign and I'm running ads for, if I'm trying to get my word out, I'm kind of lost in the
The shuffle,
wilderness,
yeah.
based with all the other voices. At least with local elections being on the odd numbered years, they are, and especially in these small communities, they are the only game in town. They're the forefront. They're, they're more in the spotlight than they would be if they were put in with the big elections. As far as people getting involved, I mean, it's a concern or I, you know, I think one of the things, my real job, a part of it at the radio station is to make sure people know what's going on. That's kind of the whole crux of why a single standalone radio station even exists today. And, we're tasked to serve Bartow County. I tell people, occasionally like, well, what's the big deal? It's just this little radio station. Well, first of all, it's not as little as you might think. The other thing is that there's there's only one place you're gonna find out what happened at a Kingston city council meeting or in a Daresville city council meeting or you Harley, if you want or the count or the commissioners, what's going on with your local government. And I know, by the way, Cartersville too, but, if there's something going on locally that can impact you, there's an opportunity for you to learn about it. And so again, I would contend the information is out there. It's how much do people want to consume it. I will grant you this, not nearly as exciting as, the negative stuff or the salacious stuff that the national media picks up on. And again, not taking any swings at any particular side for any particular issue, but again, what we strive to do at our station, kind of blending the two things, is we're I say we're lovingly a dinosaur in some ways. We have attribution for everything. The information we're going to make sure that it's correct. We don't say this is happening. We're saying according to this source, this
Mhm.
is what happened. And so in that regard, I think we try to crack that nut of having people being locally involved and also not necessarily being the first or not speculating about what's going on, but reporting on what actually has happened. If there was something that happened if we were sitting in New Harley and there was something that happened out there that we didn't like and it's on the local news, well, now I know, and I may go to the next meeting to speak against it. I may choose to run for office, or here's a thought, I might really like that and want to encourage them to continue doing it. If I hear somebody else opposed to it. So I think in our world, with social media, with such an ability to be connected, it's done a great job of disconnecting us on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that. On a personal note, when you're away from City Hall
Yeah.
and you're away from the radio station, and you're just Matt at home, what grounds you and helps you stay balanced in this role that never really turns off?
Yeah. Well, what grounds me is, I do have a lot of titles. My my best and favorite title is being Madeline Santini's dad. She's 28. She lives in Cleveland, Tennessee with her husband, and he's a fantastic guy. Matter of fact, we just visited him this past weekend. And, that's, to me, that's the job I'm most proud of. And yes, she's married and she's off and she's an adult and she's a fully formed functioning, very proud of her, but she'll always be my
Girl.
my little girl. There's no doubt about that. And, I couldn't do what I do without having a loving and supportive wife. Anthea, again, we've been together since '88. We met in college, and she would tell you she's my biggest cheerleader, and she's also my biggest critic. And it is easy when you sit in a chair and have a few different high-profile jobs where people see you or hear you or care about what you think about things, or you're making decisions, to kind of sometimes stray off that path of humility, or to think, well, I'm going to have this, and she'll kind of put me right back in my place. And I need that desperately from time to time. That keeps me grounded. Certainly my faith that I don't talk about. I mean, I'm Catholic. I don't go out to preach about my faith. I try to. Some of my favorite people on the planet are people who don't have to tell you who they are. They show you who they are. And so I have been fortunate that I have a lot of great role models in that regard, and I try to emulate them. So again, if you just go out there and try to be the best person you can be, and hopefully I am expressing that how I treat people or how I go about my day to day. Fail at it every day, but doesn't keep me from trying. And then a pretty good bit of mediocre golf kind of keeps me grounded. I'm about a 15 handicap, and good enough to have fun doing it and not totally be embarrassed. I hit enough good shots that I want to keep coming back. And it's a great social exercise. I can't wait for the sun to be out more than it is so we can golf late into the evening.
Yeah.
So again, cutting my lawn, folding clothes. People either like doing laundry or they don't. Many don't, but
I do.
I find it. I mean, give me a couple baskets of, give me a couple loads of wash and let me fold it. No, it's like, yes.
Oh man.
I like, I do, and I do all the cooking at our house because I like cooking. But my wife is the best cleaner. We can do surgery in any part of the house. I haven't had to scrub a shower or a toilet in a couple decades. And so we all do what we're good at.
Yeah.
And then we're both active at a local gym and do classes there. Actually, we go to U Harley for that at Anytime Fitness. But we do that 3 times a week, hopefully, and get some social time in there. And that burning off some of that energy that might be pent up is a good way to stay grounded as well. And also humiliate or a little bit of humility of not being able to do things that your brain still thinks you can do that you definitely can't.
Yeah, I can even at 30, I can relate to that. Mayor Matt, before we get out of here, go ahead. If there's anything you want to plug or promote or tell people about, or any final word that you want to give?
Again, I would just say thank you for letting me serve in the role as mayor. Thank you for having me on here to sit down here and chat. It's been great to get to know you a little bit better. And then, like I said, just get involved locally if there's something that you feel that we could be better at as a city. If you're not into local radio, you can certainly check out the radio station. We got great shows at the Grand Theater, and again, I tell people I don't really live in the real world. I mean, I'm kind of a domesticated animal. I don't know, I can live outside the fence anymore. But again, relative to the public service role, I'm grateful to be able to serve as mayor of Cartersville. It's a wonderful place, and again, it's not wonderful because of who the mayor is. It's wonderful because of the people that work for the city and the people that live in the city and want to make a difference. And so for that, I would just say thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it. And talk about grateful. I'm grateful for your time today, man. This was, again, like I said at the beginning, just being able to sit down and talk to the person who looks out for the best interests of the city that you live in. Just a really cool experience for me. I'm super excited that we got to do this. And I'm glad to get to know you now. And if I see you out and about, I won't hesitate to say hello. And onward and upward, right?
That's right. You'll get the appearance fee invoice here in a couple days.
Cool. I'll be ready for it. Guys, thank you for tuning in today. Follow on social, check out Cartersville, look at their social media, find out the events that are happening in the city. There's stuff happening all the time that you can get involved with. Lots of great nonprofits here in Cartersville that you can get involved with. Go to Cartersville's official website and you can check out, job opportunities, information about the city, information about the people that represent the city, all those fun things. I'll be sure to put that in the description of the episode so that you can click it if you're interested. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.